Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and for my next character I wanted to get back to doing some good old-fashioned spellcasting, since my first 3 or 4 or whatever characters were all attack-based, and it is about time we give some spellcasting some love during this league in which it's actually pretty fucking good still. And this will be more or less a highlight reel of pressing Vaal Arc, Vaal Ice Nova, and destroying legions. So unfortunately, spellcasting is probably still just way better for this league than most attack-based skills, and that is largely because you just can't compete with some of these Vaal buttons or some of the area scaling on these skills. I have chosen to do Shock Nova for this character primarily, as well as Orb of Storms, but of course I have just slotted in a Vaal Ice Nova with, no real way of building for it, just I'm a spellcaster, here's a Vaal Ice Nova, and a Vaal Arc, and it should clean up anyway. But the idea was to play around with the new Shock Nova because it got reworked a little bit with its effect, as you can see, and then also the damage that it has, I think, got a little reworked. And overall, Shock Nova is really good. If I didn't have these fat Vaal buttons, this character would still be great, and I'd be loving the shit out of it, because the area on Shock Nova is big, the single target on Shock Nova is really big, and you can pair it with Orb of Storms for even better clearing. And this Inquisitor has just been a delight to play so far, because there's a lot of crunch, there's a lot of good damage, and it can be fairly safe depending on where you stand, how you stand, and play the character. But of course that doesn't really matter when you just press Vaal Ice Nova most of the time and just shit on the entire screen. And you do owe it to yourself to play some sort of crit spellcaster at some point this league, just to explore the Legion destruction madness that this is, because it's pretty unparalleled, and the only thing close as a melee, I suppose, would be to scale Cyclone that is absolutely ridiculous, and then just full screen AoE with your Cyclone build, which should probably be stronger than this, but there's no way you can hit this type of computer lag with anything of the melee variety, there we go, at the moment. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. It's just a whole bunch of highlight clips of pressing Vaal Ice Nova that is a lot of fun. It's only on a 4-link with just crit strikes, crit multi, and energy leech, and you have to scale a pretty immense amount of area to make sure that it's going to work well, because it is based off of hitting enemies, and once it hits one enemy it'll cascade to another one, and you do need the area to make that cascade happen, whereas Vaal Arc would just do it by itself and don't need that much scaling. So most spellcaster builds could use either Vaal Arc or Vaal Ice Nova to clean up these legions big time, but you should be able to see that the single target damage of Shock Nova is actually pretty sick right now. So for a clear and for a single target skill, I do recommend checking out some Shock Nova. For your Mjolnir characters, your cast on crit characters, or just plain self-cast, it seems like it's going to be quite a powerful skill. So I haven't even done too much scaling of it just yet, and the damage already looks rather absurd. And the mapping has been just an absolute dream, largely because of Orb of Storms I have attached to Chain. That helps clear very nicely, but then Shock Nova by itself does do quite a lot of work. And it is just going to be kind of up to how you want to build spellcasters these days, whether it's pure life, pure energy shield, life with mind over matter on mana, life with mind over matter on energy shield. And it seems like Mom EB, which is the one I've got right now, using my energy shield as a secondary defense system, is probably the easiest way to build a spellcaster, especially as an Inquisitor. You get a lot of energy shield regen. You do get pretty decent life sustain if you grab like an Atziri Flask, and then the Cinder Swallow just keeps you very well alive during all of this type of bullshit as well. So because the spellcasting is just so insane, I have been doing quite a lot of sextanted double beyonded maps since it handles it just so smoothly, and then I finally got to try out a little bit of single target against a tier 9 Elder, still at like maybe half my damage potential here, and it's already absolutely absurd, so I have no doubt that Uber Elder is going to be kind of a joke with this type of damage. You can see that portals like don't even get to exist, which doesn't happen too often. And then I also killed a charged Zoth Breachstone in a second. So the damage is definitely there for Shock Nova, and I do want to go over how I made the character, what's going on with the gear, and what you can do to replicate it. So here stands my magnificent beast, the exclamation mark BJ, which is a command in my chat for Twitch that explains some things about a certain Inquisitor lover. And it's level 89, it is using a staff. Now the primary reason for staff in this build is just to maximize area. You really don't have to do a staff, but staffs are very fun to craft, and then you do maximize the area by taking certain staff nodes, like this one here. Gets you quite a lot of area, additional 10 there, additional 10, additional 6, and then based off of power charges you can have even more. So ultimately this could be like an entire area gem link by itself, which is quite a lot of free area. Well, not free, you are investing quite a lot of area for the investment points right there. And ultimately you can see that you get quite a lot of area on Shock Nova. Now it does have two certain aspects to it. If you read it, there's a ring and then an outer ring. So there's one inner ring, one outer ring. This is the default microtransaction right now, by the way. And if you get even more area, you can really see how big it actually is. Now the inner ring is going to do less damage, the outer ring is going to do more damage. They still do quite a lot both, but ideally and optimally you're hitting things with the outer ring. So it is a little bit tricky to kind of get used to and go for your maximum DPS, and Intensify certainly helps. Once you cast it over and over, your circle gets smaller, and then you try and hit things with the outer ring, and you can actually see the proper visualization of the area by swapping onto the microtransaction, which is Rift Worm Shock Nova. Doesn't look great or anything, but it does show you exactly how much area I have. Now that is quite a large full screen effect, is it not? So it should be hitting from, up to that outer edge, and then once you really, dial it in, the outer edge here is where your maximum damage is happening, or, take out area, you can really start to see that it goes a little bit smaller. This is still with a fair amount of area scaling though, because I do have Carcass Jack, I've got like a bunch of area on the tree, so even with not using the area gem and intensifying, still got like 120% area from the tree or something. So it's fairly ridiculous area and does make for a lot of fun as a spellcaster build, though it's a very versatile build. You could pretty much put anything in here for this type of build. Purely it's currently lightning based, so you could just grab Ball Lightning, Arc, Stormburst, and they're all very strong at the moment, Stormcall as well, but you could respec just a little bit on the tree to then become any other kind of spellcaster, anything fire or cold based, as this sort of generic enough Inquisitor, and then ultimately you can shove in a Vaal Ice Nova or a Vaal Arc into any of these setups and it's going to crush legions. So it is a very versatile type of generic spellcaster, and the Vaal Ice Nova setup, as I mentioned, is over here. As it gets higher level, it's going to do better damage. As you get more area, it's going to chain better. So you do want a 20/20 ideally and a Vaal Ice Nova. Then attach just crit strikes, so we have consistent, reliable crits expanding out on the legions. And then Energy Leech, since, I don't know, it's a good damage support, and some crit multi, though I could probably improve upon that at this point if I need to. But the idea behind the staff is to get those nodes. Staffs themselves are fun to craft, and then you can also have 2, 5, or 6 links, because I am using my secondary 5 link for a very big Orbistorm setup. Currently largely utility, but it also does some serious damage, as you can see in the videos. We've got Orbistorms, Chain, so it does do some good area chaining. It then runs Innovate, which gives a bit of damage, but as well as that, a lot of damage to your Shock Nova and to your Ice Nova. Then Ice Bite, which does do a bit of damage and also give you Frenzy Charges. And Power Charge on crit, which is just a easier way of sustaining power charges because you don't always do it through your main setup. But you could make it more utility based with just curse on hits and stuff. You could make it more damage based with more damage. But ultimately, Orbistorms is a pretty damn nice secondary skill to have in your setup, and I'd highly recommend it. The main links themselves are Shock Nova, Spell Echo, Intensify, which I really do like, because it gives you a lot of area for just generic clear, but then when you want to go into boss damage, you just charge it up and it does a lot more damage, a little bit less area. Energy leech, crit strikes, and faster casting. Both of these two are just for early game because you don't have much cast speed or much crit until you really start scaling everything, and you can keep them in late game too, but they're by no means your best damage supports, and you can easily replace them when you're ready to get more damage. Because currently you can see here I've got 1.2 million shock nova damage on my ring, so that's the outer sort of nova area. And these two links are absolutely trash for damage. Take it away 15%, take that away 12%, as opposed to, let's say, an intensifier, which is going to be 40% of your damage. You could easily replace crit strikes right now with a conk effect for single target, or a controlled destruction for just overall clear. You could replace faster casting with any of those as well. So they are more just things that help smoothen out your character early on, but in the end game you can definitely get rid of them. And if you may be asking, why no Pledge of Hands? Pledge of Hands is pretty good. I have tried out Pledge of Hands, and the Greater Spell Echo does stack with Spell Echo, but that really feels like an Ice Nova only staff. I encourage you guys to try everything out yourselves as well. Maybe you like things different or more than I do, but it locks you down so hard. When you currently play with this, you know, you have two little casts and it locks you down for a split second, but it's really not that bad. When you have Greater Spell Echo, it casts 4 times and it actually locks you down for the longest time, where you're just standing still and you can't break out of the animation by running or doing anything until it's finished. And it becomes pretty ridiculous. Whereas if you're doing it with Ice Nova, it doesn't lock you down at all because it just repeats your Ice Nova 4 times outside of your actual character. You click it once and then it's going to Ice Nova 4 times on Frostbolt, and to that effect, I'd say Pledge of Hands is going to be probably a best in slot staff for every Ice Nova build, and I'd recommend checking it out there. As far as this staff is concerned, it may look kind of impressive. I did craft it with just single etheric fossil spams. Ultimately, it's not that good. It is actually kind of crap. If I just multi-modded around power charge on crit or the double damage suffix, I'd have a much better staff. This one just has saved me a few exalts in multi-modding, but it's really not that good. I'd much rather build a staff very similar to the one you saw in Occultist Ice Nova, which has things like double damage, has the focus double damage effect. Definitely going to do something like that, I think, and play around more with focus, because focus seems to be very worth it. So you get it on your gloves like this, 25% attack and cast speed while focused, and it becomes a little DPS button you press every now and again that gets you a lot more attack speed. If you get it on your amulet, on your staff, it then becomes a huge DPS button, and it's something I'm definitely going to look into. Aside from that, it's a bunch of stuff you've seen before. We're running Mark of the Shaper, a really good one right now, costs like 5C, which is just ridiculous. You then need some sort of Elder Ring to get benefit of the spell damage, so I just made a Elder Diamond Ring with like essences that has a little bit of damage. Since we're not currently using a curse, doesn't really matter what's on that ring. Using Devouring Diadem, which helps you out for getting that Eldritch Battery node, and then a little bit more sustain for your energy shield, though Inquisitor already has a lot. Then running Carcass Jack for the area, just got some cast speed and crit multi on an amulet, a little bit of life and energy shield on your boots, same thing with your gloves, and just some kind of basic Stygian that reduces flask charges because that makes things a little nicer. I then do really recommend getting a Cinder Swallow. That does mean you need fire damage somewhere. I crafted it on a ring here so that everything I do does ignite, but Cinder Swallow is huge amounts of sustain for your end game sort of mapping. Get a bit of leech from its Ares Promise. Don't have to worry about mana because we're an Inquisitor, and that is being sustained for your energy shield in Pious Path. These were the first 4 points I took while leveling Inquisitor because they're huge quality of life. At some point, once you have like 500 to 1000 energy shield, you take Eldritch Battery, which we don't need on this build since we have Devouring Diadem, but I think it's a nicer way of building a character right now. You then grab the 4 penetration nodes and you start to deal huge amounts of damage. Aside from that, the character kind of builds itself. You're just, leveling, grabbing life, leveling through, grabbing your crit and all that. These were some of the last few points I took because they are just pure damage. And you can make a much more defensive tree if you need to. Make much more offensive tree if you need to. As always, you do build for the sort of situation you're going up against. You can see how my Ice Nova Occultist was way more offensive than my Ice Nova Assassin on solo self-found hardcore. So you just build where you're going to play and how you need for your character. So currently I'm just going huge amounts of damage, dying every few levels, but no big deal because I'm having lots of fun. If I wanted to never die, obviously I'd get a little bit more life, a little bit more energy shield, but for now 4.3k life and 1300 energy shield is a decent amount when you are using Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery. And then strongest defense is a good offense, so kill everything before it kills you. Chances are you will be doing a lot of living. So other than that, we'll also mention that with a Devouring Diadem, you can chuck in both Wrath and Zealotry and then still get Herald of Ice. So we've got full reservation of 3 auras thanks to this helm. I am using Leap Slam as a travel with faster attacks, Fortify, and additional accuracy. It actually seems to beat out Lightning Warp or just pure Flame Dash at the moment, and then Blink as a secondary as well. And I do have one Watcher's Eye for this build that primarily you want Arcane Surge while having Zealotry. So since we're using EB, this one over here, you don't actually ever proc Arcane Surge yourself, so this gives you Arcane Surge for free. And then the Wrath crit seem to be fairly cheap as a secondary right now, so I just got that as well. So it's a very good Watcher's Eye, and by no means do you need this exact one. Even the Zealotry one, kind of a luxury, don't have to have it, but it is fairly cheap and worth getting, I think. So that's the character for now. Holy shit, that was a lot of talking. Spellcasters, Ice Nova, Shock Nova, Ball Lightning, Stormburst, Magma Orb, Divine Ire, fucking anything. There's so many good spellcasters right now. You can still thoroughly enjoy those, even though it's more of a melee league, and I do recommend it, especially just to try out some Vile Ice Nova, because it is completely ridiculous on Legions. Though computers beware, if you have kind of a potato PC, you are going to struggle and possibly burn your house down. So just a slight word of warning there, it does lag you up pretty bad. So that's the character for now. Hopefully get you some endgame done in the next few days. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.